Darkness engulfs you. You do nothing but lie there as the only sounds you hear are your own thoughts. What have I done? What will I do? What's going to happen? But then you ask yourself the one underlying question. What kind of person are you? But I'm me, is the first answer you jump to. And it's true. Who else could you be but you? But if you had a blank slate to start over, how would you go about filling in the emptiness? Would you do everything you've done all over again? Do you see yourself as a good person? Do you even know what a good person is? Or perhaps you'd go for another option. Indulge a little and let yourself do things you normally wouldn't even consider doing. After all, we tend to give in to escapism once in a while, and no one's going to mention the candy you stole from those kids. The more you think about it, however, the more you struggle. You squirm. You fight off threats from the outside, but what if the threats come from within? What if the problem stems from you? What then? The more you think about it, the more afraid you become, and can easily be overcome with fear. The irony is fear is what drives us to survive. As you learn, the things you fear cause you pain, and you push those away to survive. And isn't that what we all strive for? And if not that, then what? As you wonder what kind of animal you even are, trying to view yourself in whatever image you deem yourself fit, have you ever stopped to consider and thought of yourself to be just you? Who else could you even be but you? What choices led you here? What ideas have you adopted that molded your brain into what it is now? What choices will you make in the future? Where will your story go? So I ask again, what kind of person are you? The main character, the person you control, the central viewpoint in an RPG. All information you get is fed to you through this character, and how that character develops is a main pillar of RPG design. In other genres, development would come about from finding stronger items and weapons, and while RPGs do also have stronger items and weapons, they have another layer of character progression through stat blocks and ability checks. Disco Elysium is a non-traditional RPG. Non-traditional in the way that there is no combat, instead any conflict would be resolved through skill checks and dialogue trees. There are other items in the game that you can utilize, such as clothing items to help give you a boost to your stats, but most of it comes down to your skills and dialogue choices. In Disco Elysium, you play as a detective with amnesia trying to solve a murder mystery, and what makes this game stand out is the choices you make, how minor they are, provide an immersive and effective method of character progression I don't usually see in other role-playing games. So where do we start? Normally in RPGs, you start the game off as a child in a village, or a small-time adventurer, or a prisoner, or a prisoner, or a prisoner. But in Disco Elysium, you start off in a trashed hotel room with your clothes tossed all over the place. You have a hangover, and you avoid getting a heart attack while trying to reach your tie. Oh, thank God. You realize you have amnesia as you can't even remember how you look, and as you wipe away the fog in the mirror to get your appearance... Behold. Yeah, that's the face you make when you have a hangover. We leave our room, attempt to flirt with a lady,
What was that?
Goddamn, the realism, finally, the game for me. And after failing that, we head downstairs and we meet with Kim Kitsuragi, a lieutenant from the 57th Precinct who has been sent to help us. We learned we didn't even bother taking the body down from the tree, and the options such as, "Look man, yeah," is the kind of dialogue you'd expect from us. We talked to the cafeteria manager, and we'd want to avoid paying for damages, so running away seems like the smartest option. Damn, this is only the first half hour of the game. Right off the beginning, through dialogue choices we get given, we can begin to try and mold our character into how we see them. What kind of lines would they pick? What would we want to pick? The mirror scene alone already sets the precedent for how you choose to play given your own interpretation of what the expression is. Is it a superstar expression? Is it a sign of pain? You decide and you figure out how you choose to go. Starting off with amnesia is also a good way to remove any notion of innate characteristics that we would have to allow us to begin to mold our character. Now, this is not the first time this has happened, as previous games have had characters who have also lost their memories, such as the player character in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. And not having any previous personalities come out directly lets us try to figure out what kind of character we are playing. How close are they to us, and how different are they from us? The dialogue options we have range from eccentric to rather serious, as well as providing us some dialogue choices that can be seen as, frankly, quite bigoted, but the option is there for us and we have no idea if this character was even a bigot to begin with, or if we're just slowly making him into one. And each dialogue option, each thought cabinet, each drug you consume, gets recorded down and kept for later to be brought up, whether to showcase a contradictory thought you might have or to reinforce that you have taken yourself down the chosen progression path. And what helps this progression is the story. And while you would consider the murder mystery to be the main plot of the game, it's actually secondary. The story is about Martinez, the district we're in, the city of Revachol, and of the world Elysium. It's also the story of our protagonist, Harrier Dubois, and of the people of Revachol. The city, a monarchy turned commune, former commune now, as it's now under the control of the Coalition of Nations, and as you wander about, you can just sense that this is the remnants of a previous conflict, 41 years after it even happened. And as you talk with the people in the area, you get to flesh out the district with their own personal stories and takes on the history. Or you can go and talk to Kuno and get whatever it is Kuno likes to talk about.
Alright, entertain the Kuno. Show me what you got. What you got there? What you got, huh? Show me what you got.
As you wander about Martinez, you learn of the various groups that have a hand in Revachol's future. The Moral Intern, the Dock Workers Union, the RCM, the Speed Freaks who are just way too hardcore. And exploring these stories, you get to determine how Harry develops, his thoughts and opinions, and how these come about and how they can be influenced, not just by outside influences such as the ongoing events or stories the others tell you, but also by Harry's own stats and skills. Each one plays a role and each one provides a direction you can go down, and as you do, you get given a choice between the options of, I can fix him, and I could fix him, but whatever the hell is going on with him is even funnier. Hey, this video is sponsored by no one. I don't actually have a sponsor. I just don't know how to transition. Can you imagine if I had a sponsor on a Disco Elysium video of all things? When you start the game, you get given points to distribute between 4 attributes: intelligence, psyche, physique, and motorics. And within each attribute there are 6 skills for a total of 24 skills. Each skill has their own usefulness, personality, and detriment. When leveling up stats in other RPGs, we can expect that the higher the stat, the better we are at it. For example, in Dungeons & Dragons, a wizard relies on an intelligence stat, so if they manage to buff it completely, then not only will they be able to hit their spells more consistently, but it will be harder for opponents to resist those spells. Alongside that, any skill that will rely on intelligence would also receive a bonus that allows for more leeway regarding rolls, to the point where the average rolls would be consistent successes. This can help promote a system where min-maxing your stats could be beneficial, and while people would generally want to avoid this, there are going to be others who would see the benefit of trying to buff your really beneficial stats. Within Disco Elysium, however, it promotes a more balanced playstyle. Sure, you'd want high stats to help you to get through the game, and you'd want to be better at the things you currently do, but it comes about more as overthinking. A few examples. The drama skill counts as your lie detector. It also gives you your ability to lie and put on an act. With higher levels of drama, not only will you be the insufferable theater kids, but you'd begin to suspect that everything is a lie. What is true? What isn't true? You begin to overthink the situation, whereas if drama is low, then you wouldn't really be able to lie. You'd easily fail any check made to lie, and you can't tell whether or not somebody is lying. Encyclopedia gives you knowledge on the world, but a higher encyclopedia stat will give you useless bits of trivia where you probably won't even focus on the conversation anymore. You're too busy thinking about bits of trivia and you've lost track of what's being said. Electrochemistry helps you understand people who take narcotics as well as alcohol and smoke cigarettes. So it'll give you understanding of, yes, this person is very clearly on drugs. But the higher electrochemistry you have, the more you think, maybe I want those drugs inside of me. What about skills that conflict with each other? Empathy helps you relate to others, while authority lets you stand up for yourself. Higher levels of empathy, though, can cause you to feel overcome with grief and not push people to their limits, because you begin to empathize with them. Authority might come in and conflict with empathy, suggesting that you do in fact push further, while empathy tells you, no, back off, you're going to make them cry. What's even the best way to build Harry if the higher the skill, the more unstable it becomes? That's part of the charm of the game. It promotes building various skills rather than focusing on just a select few. Maybe you don't really want a high half-light skill, or maybe you want to have just enough pain threshold to get by. Too low of a score or too high can be seen as a bad thing. However, there's another benefit to each of these, and it's replayability. In the footage you're seeing now, I'm playing a build that focuses on intelligence and psyche, and during dialogue, your skills will be rolling passive skill checks to see if they pick up on anything. I will usually get more intelligence skills showing up such as rhetoric or encyclopedia, but somebody might be playing a more physique-heavy build and might be given more shivers or electrochemistry skill checks. This sets it up so that the playthrough I'm going through and the one you might play to be rather different. You might find information that affects your quests or gameplay differently from mine. It might lead you to wonder what would happen if I had a playthrough of the game with these skill bonuses rather than what I have now. How would that end up affecting Harry? Would his personality change or would he remain the same? In my playthrough, with my relatively low electrochemistry skills, inspecting this ashtray just informs me of the embers on the cigarette, though if I played with a higher physique and higher electrochemistry, inspecting it will trigger a dialogue with myself suggesting that I smoke that cigarette. I can reject it, stating that the filter has been burned through, to which I'm told I should get myself a new cigarette to smoke. Rather, I should get a whole pack of cigarettes to smoke. So I get given a quest to buy a whole carton of cigarettes to smoke, and because I've given into this side of Harry, all my responses are just various forms of yes. You'll also see these skill checks in dialogue, and there's two variants: red checks and white checks. The red ones are one and done. If you fail it, you cannot attempt it again. The white ones allow you to reattempt them if you manage to level up the respective skill or have a thought cabinet or buff that helps you regarding it. It's a way to prevent you from being blocked or soft-locked in the game, and even if you fail one option, there are other paths to reach your goal, allowing you to pick the path that best supports your strengths and chosen playstyle. For example, I want to get past this door. How do I do it? I can steal a keycard and open the door, jump off the roof and land on the walkway, internalize a racist thought, or roundhouse kick said racist. If I fail one of these, I can go back, level up, and attempt it again. So I mentioned the thought cabinet before, as well as internalizing a thought. What does that mean? Throughout dialogue with NPCs or yourself, you will unlock these thoughts. And when you get a thought, you simply have to begin to internalize it. And as you do, you receive stat adjustments or bonuses. Each thought has a problem, and after internalizing it, you come to a solution, which provides you with entirely different stats. One example is the inexplicable feminist agenda, which starts you off with +2 authority against males, and after you reach the solution, that stat changes to +1 empathy and -1 electrochemistry. You receive this thought by declaring yourself a feminist in dialogue previously. Some thought cabinets provide different benefits rather than stat changes. Jamais Vu, for example, provides no stat changes initially, though after you internalize it, your intelligence skill caps are all increased by 1, and the green orbs you're seeing on screen will give us 1 experience point when clicked on. Sometimes these thoughts open up more dialogue trees for us when internalized. Jamais vu gives us a bonus to our skill check with one character, which gives us more dialogue and information we would otherwise miss. There are a whole lot of thoughts you can unlock, and you might not be able to unlock all of them in each playthrough. Some affect what type of cop you are, whether you're an apocalypse cop, a superstar cop, or a hobo cop, and they also affect your political alignment and are yet another mechanic in the game that allows for more replayability. Some other examples of thoughts you can unlock are the homosexual underground, aces high, aces low, volumetric shit compressor, and finger pistols 9mm. All these moments and thought cabinet options really help amplify your roleplay. It really helps build Harry into the kind of character you see him as, or the kind of character you wish to roleplay as. Depending on the thoughts you internalized, you begin to also have other dialogue options open up, as I previously mentioned, and whether they go somewhere or provide a simple remark varies from thought to thought. But the fact it's included shows a level of thought, that went into the game's writing. You can be a feminist and a fascist, and when your inner dialogue tells you to hate women, you can point out, hold on, I'm actually a feminist. To which you would then be laughed at in the end by your own guts, which tells you to be a fascist, I guess. Hey, post-recording Kage here. I just found out why your stomach talks to you about fascism. It's because it's full of shit. If you adopt communist thoughts, then you can tell people you're a communist. Likewise with other ideologies as well. Picking a side really feels like you have picked that side rather than having it be a sort of one-time choice. The initial tagline for the game is, "What kind of cop are you?" And this really helps drive that home. There's actually a lot of dialogue in the game that I know of but have not seen myself because I missed the passive skill check, or I simply was playing as a communist rather than an ultra-liberal, for example. You get given a blank slate, a character with no history to know of, and one you can also keep in the dark for as long as you can. And when you find out more of your history, your reaction to it can vary playthrough to playthrough. While you don't get to customize Harry in terms of appearance or design, you do manage to mold him into the perfect and beautiful mess you can't help but love. Or hate. Don't let me tell you what to do. Of course, it's not a Disco Elysium video if I don't talk about the politics in the game. And I understand the elephant in the room is the specter of communism that haunts it. And we will talk about communism, but it would be better to talk about the other ideologies first to give a tone of what to expect. The other reason it would be best to talk about the ideologies is because you will be adopting one of them. Even if you try to stray away from it and be as unpolitical as you can be, congratulations, you're a centrist. So for the final part, I'll be going over each of the ideologies as well as how they affect gameplay and Harry's character. There are 4 ideologies in the game: communism, fascism, ultraliberal, and moralism. And Harry can lean into any of these ideologies. None are locked off from him, and you can access them by picking dialogue options that point you in that direction. There's also some clothing you can find that help boost those political points for a bit of help. A disclaimer though, as we enter this section, these ideologies are simplified in comparison to their real-life counterparts. When I discuss these positions, I'm discussing them in relation to the game. Yes, they do draw themselves from real-world politics, but there are some differences. Nationalism in this game only counts towards fascism. However, in reality, we have left-wing nationalism and right-wing nationalism. Similar with communism, there are various schools of thought for communists, and likewise, there are different takes on liberalism, but everyone can agree to dislike a centrist. Let's start with the most contentious ideology: liberalism. Nah, I'm just kidding, it's fascism. Fascism, or nationalism if you're embarrassed about it, is normally leaned into by Harry if you pick the racist and bigoted dialogue options, the one that blame foreigners and women for the problems that exist within Revachol, as you pine for the days of old when the monarch was in power before the communists showed up. This is probably the only ideology to pick to have everyone hate you, especially Kim. The game punishes you for picking this option, essentially making you a laughingstock. The thought cabinet associated with this even damages you for picking the fascist dialogue option, as if the game is saying the ideology doesn't make sense and trying to make sense of it would damage you mentally. So who are the fascists in Revachol? You have the racist lorry driver, who uses dog whistles and believes himself to be superior because of his own race. You have Measurehead, another racist who is much more massive and muscular, who believes he is superior because of his own race. He has his own race theory, which is honestly hilarious to listen to because it doesn't make sense, and the more he talks, the less sense he makes. Yet he fully believes it. Pressing Measurehead a bit further, you find out that he's actually a Seminese supremacist, though he has never actually been to the place where they're from. He's Revacholian, and only developed this race theory from what he heard on the radio. And also, I know I play more intelligence and psyche builds, but I swear I would save Scum as much as I can just to give this guy a roundhouse kick to the face. Honestly, can never play that clip enough. So we've gone over 2 racists, but let's talk about our third one, our lucky racist. Gary the crypto-fascist, who is immediately racist towards Kim but backpedals when he finds out he's a cop because he has no spine. Rene also counts as a fascist, though he is more of a nationalist, and this goes back to what I said about the ideologies in the game being rather simplistic. Specifically, he is a monarchist and anti-communist.
Merde! Bordel de merde!
The Ultraliberals, or Ultras, are the capitalists. And you can be one by talking about making money and how much of a hustler you are. It's the ideology to pick if you want to make your game easier by getting more money. That's the whole ideology here really, making money and putting yourself on top. It's probably why the thought cabinet for Ultras lowers your empathy. In the game's history, you learn that the Ultras came about when they sided with the communists against the monarch and won. However, they later sold out the revolution by siding with the coalition against the communists. That's their thing. They seem to lean and pick the winning sides, as long as that side is aligned with their interests, and that interest is themselves. Some of the liberals you'd meet in this game are Joyce, who is very much bourgeois and she admits it freely, and this man here who is selling humanitarian aid to people, something that should be given away for free. Joyce is rather interesting, and one that makes a note regarding ultras. When talking with her, she points out that while she is an ultraliberal, she expresses regrets for the commune falling to the coalition. She also mentions that she's an ultraliberal by circumstance of her wealth. This comes up as well if you decide to play as an ultraliberal and you talk to Evart Claire, who leads the dock workers, and mention that you're an ultraliberal. And his response is, "Harry, don't be stupid, you're not an ultraliberal," essentially saying that you're too poor to be a capitalist. It would be remiss of me to not mention that the devs for the game thanked Marx and Engels when receiving an award for Disco Elysium. And it would also be remiss of me to not mention that the developers are Estonian post-Soviet leftists. Keep this in mind though as we move on to discuss communism. To be a communist in the game, you pick the left-wing dialogue option that support the workers, the union, and be an all-around man of the left. The thought cabinet for this ideology helps you level up quicker by giving you 4 experience points per left-wing option picked. People also don't get as mad with you if you pick these options, though they might think it odd that you're a cop and a communist. The communists you find in the game are Cindy the Skull, an artist, 2 student communists who are part of a book club and their dedication towards the ideology have driven others away, and there's also Evart Claire, a corrupt and slimy politician who runs the union. The game is rather sympathetic towards the communists, though it does provide some criticism towards the ideology. While fascism and liberalism are treated as jokes, more than anything with the dialogue and writing going down the path of why would you pick these, the criticism levied towards communism comes from a place of love. The description for the political ideologies on Steam mentions this about communism. Only 0.000% of communism has been built. But who knows? Maybe with your help, it will be 0.001%. It shows the futility of building such a system in a world after communism when it has crumbled and been destroyed and nothing in place to help facilitate its growth. Behold, the last communist. Watch him build communism in the current year, one snarky anti-capitalist joke at a time. In particular regarding Evart Claire, who is very much the head honcho of the socialists here in Martinez, being corrupt as I mentioned, it's odd to show how on display his corruption is. He freely tells you to go to Joyce and tell her everything about your conversation with him, and when you talk to Call Me Mañana about it, he freely and casually states that yes, he is corrupt. But so is every politician. You just have to go for the politician who is corrupt for your side. There is also a drama passive check that you can get that points out that Evart is doing what he believes is right for the union and for the workers. And as I mentioned, while fascism and liberalism are seen as jokes, and communism is criticized as an ideology that cannot achieve its goals after being kicked down, you'd think that the game advocates for a more centrist option, which is moralism. This could not be further away from the truth. In order to be a moralist, you'd have to pick the neutral option, the ideology with no opinion or belief. You stay away from politics, you keep in your lane, and you just focus on the investigation. That's how you become a moralist, and that is how you become a centrist. A radical centrist. Short of mentioning it, the game really just depicts moralism as evil. And a good example of it is with the Coalition. We know the Coalition runs Revachol, and what we also know is that above Revachol are aerostatics, essentially aircrafts hovering about, and on them are cannons aimed directly at the ground ready to fire should the Coalition's power in Revachol wane. The RCM is also a moralist organization, and they keep the peace on the ground, but they don't receive funding from the Coalition. Rather, the RCM receives funding from donations, so the Coalition doesn't see any point investing money into the RCM and would rather invest money in keeping these aerostatics in place. Martinez is also stricken with poverty and has not received aid or funding from the Coalition either. They do not seek to run Revachol, rather they just want to keep the status quo. No beliefs, just what we have now is perfectly fine. Moralists are sometimes said to stumble upon a belief, though that's described as a child stumbling across a toy on the carpets. The toy must be put away, and the child reprimanded. I believe that moralism is the one that gets criticized the most out of all the other ideologies, yet it feels rather subtle compared to fascism and liberalism. Again, it just comes short of being called evil, and it's one that you can pick as well. The achievement is also called the world's most laughable centrist, so I don't really think it actually promotes a center ideology. In fact, you can argue that the game doesn't promote any ideology at all, that it's better to have your beliefs, but not restricted to ideology. I also want to mention this regarding Harry and the political alignments, and is that whenever Harry adopts one of these positions, he has an internal dialogue about it before unlocking the thought and subsequently internalizing it. This is also another method in which the writers can demonstrate any criticism of the aforementioned ideologies. Let's talk about the two extremes. If Harry adopts communism, then he'll have some dialogue that involves lines such as "eat the rich" or "impale people who have more than 25 real in their pockets." And the more you listen to this dialogue, the more insane it sounds. The bravado Harry is building himself up, especially with how he alone will rebuild communism, and it's odd to hear this, while also being honestly really funny. Because the other communists you see don't demonstrate this level of bravado or machismo that Harry is displaying to himself, and while you can criticize the viewpoint that Harry has and his stance on it, you are able to take this more as an extreme position. Anything Harry does is extreme and isn't the ideal to go by. Even if Art Claire doesn't believe he's doing it by himself, he's using the Union to help him. Obviously you can't change society on your own, especially given the state that Revachol is in now, and when in the past it took a whole revolution with multiple communists to overthrow the monarch, you couldn't even possibly consider overthrowing the coalition by yourself. And it's as the Union says, every worker a member of the board. In contrast, if you let Harry adopt fascism, you get the stance of blaming foreigners and women. And while it's funny to hear if Harry will take his vows and blood against women, you get the same bravado and machismo he seems to want to demonstrate. Then, when talking to other fascists, you learn that they're pretty much the same.
People today, they only look at what's on the surface. These women, they all want a guy who looks like Kitty the Kit over there. Do you even understand how hard we've got it? How completely stacked the whole rotten deck is against people like you and me?
There's no difference. They blame foreigners and women as well. While it shows how varied some of the other ideologies are, and the many ways they can be criticized, fascism, or as Harry might put it, traditionalism, is pretty much the same. The further you go down each path, the more dialogue you open up. And what still shocks me as I replay this game is how in-depth this progression feels. The game even allows you to adopt two different political ideologies, and this gets pointed out if you go down the ultraliberal path, And it gets pointed out later in the game. A friend of mine played as a communist and an ultraliberal, and it gets pointed out that Harry is both a communist and he calls himself a hustler, and they're unsure how he reconciles this within his head. I've seen footage of people playing the ultraliberal playthroughs, moralist playthroughs, and even fascist playthroughs, and the dialogue just hits different from my communist runs. We're playing the same game, but there's new dialogue options. The people treat him differently. It's really fascinating to look at, because this is not something I would really expect from a video game. I'd expect a more linear structure. This is not something that should be as surprising as it is for me, but I see this rarely so often in RPGs that this one just feels very refreshing. While other games would have their character development be limited to just their stats and abilities, Disco Elysium has actual character developments that can be compared to books, films, or TV shows. The final cut of the game even added more interaction with Kim, and on top of that, added political vision quests that you can undergo for your most invested political ideology, going further into their criticism of the ideologies and further fleshing on the political system of the game. Alongside all of this, the white and red skill checks also gain bonuses based on whether you have exhausted dialogue, selected the proper dialogue options, or even whether or not you have stayed clean or gone down on a bender. Kim, who follows you around everywhere, even develops a bond as you are trying to solve the case, and that bond can be broken if you choose to go down a path that's antagonistic towards him. But if you avoid this, you can find bonuses because Kim trusts you. If there's ever a game I would recommend to people, it's Disco Elysium. It's truly a masterpiece with so much depth that can make us ask ourselves about our own person, our politics, and just how different an RPG could be. There's a lot more to go over for this game. I've not spoken much about Kim or Kuno, or really gone into a lot of the weird dialogue, such as sticking your thumb up your ass to show how honorable you are. And this is deliberate because while I could go on and extend this video for hours talking about each character I enjoy and go further in depth, I want people to experience this game for themselves. It is a journey and a well-written story that is well worth your time. There is one final bit I also should mention. While working on this video, news came out at the start of the month that the Zaum Cultural Association has been dissolved. Not to be confused with the Zaum company that's developing the sequel, and core members of the development team from Disco Elysium have left involuntarily due to what has happened. I'll leave a link in the description for the article written. I was going to end this off with a joke, but I'm going to finish this by saying that no company deserves your loyalty. Rather, support the artists and creators who create the work that you love.